heading into their game tonight, with Texas A&M, and from an NCAA tournament standpoint, what this game might actually mean. Give you a brief update on kind of where A&M stands, LSU's pitch, all of that. Just prime it up, and then again we'll talk to Browninger and give you final thoughts. And then I also do want to touch on Charles Alexander having his number retired at LSU this fall. So we'll kind of do a dual open here. Let's start, though, with the SEC tournament. And everyone's talked all week long. What does this mean for LSU? Do they want to win it? Jay Johnson's approach, all of those different things. And Jay Johnson, when he met with the media on Thursday, was once again asked, does having their NCAA tournament fate, national seed, all that stuff seemingly locked up, change their approach in the SEC tournament?
It just validates more of the regular season piece. But for me, it will only change a little bit, like a lot less than people think about how this goes or how we approach it. Like I want to win this tournament because it's a competition. And on top of that, like everything is training for something. And what a great opportunity to play 3 teams that are capable of winning the national championship. So I'd like to have our players have that experience and use it to be able to draw from for what's ahead.
Look, I 100% believe Jay Johnson that he wants to win. Like, that guy is one of the most competitive people that I've ever met in my entire life. Like, he wants to win more than he doesn't want to lose type deal, right? So he absolutely will have the team ready. They will make moves to win, but as he even alluded to later in that press conference, there are certain things that you're not going to do because you want guys fresh for next weekend, because the NCAA tournament is the tournament that everybody wants to win, right? So, yeah, you'll see Cade Anderson on the mound tonight for LSU. I'd be absolutely stunned if you don't. And it's going to mimic what you saw Paul Skeens do in 2023 in this tournament. Skeens threw 88 pitches. Now, Arkansas roughed him up a little bit, so he only got through 3 2/3. If you get 88 pitches out of Cade Anderson and he's being really efficient, that could be 15 outs with a guy like Cade Anderson. And if you can get that, you feel great. Even if you only get 12, you get 4 innings from Cade Anderson in any game you play this year, you're going to have a really solid chance to win that game. Then you look at what A&M's dealing with, whether it be the injuries to Jay Slavulette, to Caden Sorrell, which are just absolutely massive. I mean, absolutely massive to not have those 2 bats in your lineup, which they won't. Both of them, oddly enough, breaking their hand in a week's time. Caden Sorrell broke his hand game 1 against Georgia. That was last Thursday. And then Jay Slavulette yesterday, Thursday, against Auburn. So in a week's time, you lose both those guys to broken bones in their hands. That's just odd in and of itself. But what you're replacing them with if you're A&M, nowhere close to that, because no other team in the country can replace those 2 hitters with anything close. So you add all that in, and yeah, that obviously points advantage LSU. I think LSU being fresh is something, huge coming into this game. And we're all kind of learning this new format of the SEC tournament. And I'll be quite honest with you, I don't really like it. But I didn't mean to go off on that tangent, but the reason why, like, you look at it and you go, man, A&M's played 2 games. They should be taxed on pitching. Well, they're not really as taxed as you would think. Like, is Weston Moss thrown? Yeah, and he's really good. But they're playing for their NCAA tournament life. Like, if they need an inning out of Weston Moss, he's going to throw against LSU. If they absolutely have a chance to win that game and he's their best chance to win, he's going to pitch. Will he extend as much as he has in the past? Probably not. But they still have the luxury of starting their number 3, which in a double elimination tournament, you might not at this point. Like, think about it. You get to Friday in a double elimination tournament, and A&M could be on their fourth game already. So it kind of condenses it all for everyone. There's a lot of things I don't like about it, but that kind of speaks to the pitching aspect of it a little bit. When I look at it just from an LSU standpoint, obviously, look, I want to see Cade Anderson go out there, be effective for however long he's in the ball game, stay in routine, and do all those things. I think it's massively important. I would like LSU to win this ball game so they can get Anthony Ianson a start on Saturday. That's always my goal in the SEC tournament, is get your 1 and your 2 a start. And now in a single elimination format, again, another reason to hate it, you have to win in order to do that. But what it really comes down to me as well with is offense for LSU. Because away from home, LSU hadn't been good offensively. And this counts as being away from home. They've played 20 games away from Alex Box Stadium. That includes your 16 true road games and your 4 neutral site. They've averaged 5.5 runs per game. You compare that to the 35 games you played at home and you averaged 9 runs per game, that matters. Now, you scored 15 runs in your last 2 road games against South Carolina. South Carolina's not good. Texas A&M's pitching staff, from a talent standpoint, far exceeds South Carolina. And the last time you faced that staff, you scored 7 runs in 3 games. So can you build off of anything you had against South Carolina and carry it over into this game tonight? That's obviously something huge that I want to see. And then the other part of this is the NCAA tournament. And y'all, I'm just not going to budge on this. LSU is a lock for a national seed. D1 baseball, they released their updated field of 64 today as you head into the weekend of conference tournament. They had LSU as the 5. You'll remember on Monday they had LSU as the 7 because they thought, okay, this is, committee, what they might do. Kendall Rogers even tweeted out that he would have LSU higher, but they really took into account what the committee might do here. And I fully believe that they're still tapped into that throughout the week, given everything that's happened at conference tournaments. And now you look up, and LSU in D1's projection is the 5th overall seed. So without even playing a game, according to D1 baseball, they've moved up 2 spots on the line. I understand this is not a great RPI opportunity for LSU. I get it, okay? Texas A&M stands at 50 in the RPI right now. And if you lose the game, yes, your RPI will drop a few spots. I don't know how many. We'll say a few instead of a few spots. And I'm here to tell you it shouldn't matter at all. Because what LSU did over 55 games matters a hell of a lot more and always should matter a hell of a lot more than one game in a single elimination tournament that doesn't actually mean anything for a team like LSU. The 55-game sample you played before that, where you finished top 4 in the toughest league in the country, won 19 games in the toughest league in the country, won 42 in the regular season, matters so much more than what happens on Friday night. And if it doesn't to the committee, then that's a whole bigger issue that we definitely need to discuss. They already marry themselves to the RPI enough. That would be excessive and ridiculous. So for me, LSU is a lock, regardless of what happens tonight. For me, it's more go out there, get Anderson a start, win, get Ianson a start, pack up and go home. Like that. That's it. Like if you get to Saturday and you get Anthony Ianson a start, after he exits the game, I don't care what happens the rest of the way. I really don't. Like there's not a fiber of my being that does. So that's really where I stand on the SEC tournament. I'll give you some more later in the show on matchup-wise and things I'm actually looking for LSU as it pertains to them carrying it over into the NCAA tournament and things of that nature. But as far as the SEC tournament goes, for me, you're a lock no matter what you do because 55 games is way more important than one game in a single elimination tournament. And win that so you can get your number 2 a start as well. That's all. That's it. I'm good there. Now, before we grab a break, switching off of that and into a little LSU football, LSU announced that Alexander the Great, Charles Alexander, running back in the 70s for LSU, the first 4,000-yard rusher in Southeastern Conference history, will have his number retired this fall in Tiger Stadium. He will join Billy Cannon, of course, Tommy Casanova, Jerry Stovall, all as honorees having their numbers displayed. And, it's interesting because anytime we have the retire the number conversation, it's always the same names that get thrown out. Like, all right, Joe Burrow's 9 needs to be up there yesterday, right? Guy had the greatest season of any quarterback in LSU history, won a Natty, won a Heisman, like all those things. We know how great Joe Burrow was. First overall pick, needs to be up there yesterday. Jaden Daniels, Heisman winner. Yeah, needs to be up there. Absolutely. He's one of 3 in the program's history, needs to be up there. You hear Glenn Dorsey tossed out all the time. You hear Kevin Falk tossed out all the time, and they absolutely deserve it. Rarely, if ever, did you hear Charles Alexander in that conversation, and that's kind of just an oversight on all of us. Because That's a guy who said first 4,000 yard career rusher in SEC history. He was a 2-time finalist for the Heisman Trophy, SEC Freshman of the Year, first-round draft pick. Like, he checked all those boxes. First-team All-American twice. How about this? Capped his LSU career holding 27 school records. Like, if that doesn't warrant the number being retired, nothing else really does. Did he win a national championship? No. But you know what? A lot of great LSU players from 1958 to 2003 didn't. I mean, Kevin Falk is in that conversation. Everyone always throws out having his number retired. This is such a well-deserved and well-earned and overdue honor, quite honestly, for Charles Alexander. And you know what? No. I'm not old enough to have seen Charles Alexander play, but I heard a lot of stories about him. He's one of the first guys you learn about when you learn LSU football. He also incidentally lived next door to my parents for a few years, obviously, definitely before I was born, during his NFL days, but that's a separate aside. But, I mean, that's one of the reasons why. Yeah, I heard a lot about Charles Alexander growing up and learning LSU football. So, I mean, just an awesome honor and one that, as I said, quite honestly, overdue. And, man, shame on us for kind of forgetting about that and not mentioning him in those conversations, you know, when we just gushed over Burrow and Daniels and Falk and Dorsey. And again, all for great reason. And all of those numbers should be up there too. But Charles Alexander will take his rightful place up in the rafters, or I guess you want to say the facade, of Tiger Stadium come this fall. And, man, that's going to be a joyous day of celebration. And just well-deserved and well overdue. I mean, guys in like every Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame, LSU Hall of Fame, Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. He's in all of them. I mean, retire the number, next logical step. So congrats to Charles Alexander on an awesome honor. He in a press release by LSU said he was truly humbled by this, and that he will never forget getting the phone call that his number will be retired. So congratulations to Alexander the Great. We're going to grab a break, come back on the other side. It's the Hunt Palmer Show, presented by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Preston Guy joins us on the other side. Stay here.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp.
Welcome back in. Friday edition of The Hunt Palmer Show. Musso filling in for Hunt. Hunt's up in Shreveport. Playing a little golf, I hear, which, I mean, man, do you. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. That's what we're all going to do when we get out of here. Preston Guy joins the show every Friday here at Second Segment. He does so now, of course, TigerBait.com. Preston Guy on Twitter at PGuy77. Preston, I feel like you and I have been doing this a lot lately, so great to chat with you again, man. How are you?
Man, I'm just so happy to be here on the Matt Musso Show every Friday. Someone has to work on Fridays, and I guess that's why they call me and you in, right?
Yeah, we draw the short straw there, don't we? Normally on the whole Friday. Preston, I'll tell you, our building over here empty. Like, just there's nobody here. It's 1 o'clock Memorial Day weekend. Yeah, they're long gone.
Is Jonah coming in after this?
Yeah, no, he's here. He's here. He will always be here. Yes, exactly. That guy. Man, sometimes I think he'd rather work than sleep. All right, Preston, let's talk some LSU football. You know, I was perusing Twitter on Thursday night and came across one from you about LSU's running backs and the running game. And you went back from when Brian Kelly got hired, and Josh Williams, Logan Diggs, Caden Durham, those are the three that you highlighted because they had the most yards. Obviously, 2 of those years you had Jaden Daniels, and you noted that, man, without Jaden Daniels, you need the metric to improve for LSU in the running game. So my question to you is, we've already seen 1 year without Daniels, and that's Caden Durham, obviously. Now you're replacing everything on the offensive line, 4 starters. Why are we to believe that LSU's run game will improve in 2025?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was mostly 4 of the same guys all 3 years. And for Brian Kelly's first 3 years, no running back ran for more than 753 yards. And, of course, Jaden Daniels, of course, the first couple years took a lot of that away from the running backs. The last year, Caden Durham, your leading rusher at 753, not ideal given that basically outside of running backs, your team contributed about 40 yards rushing. You were good for 107th in the country last year in your rushing offense. And, then I looked at it, and of the top 20 offenses, the lowest rated rushing offense was 73 in terms of scoring offenses, right? So if you run the ball at least above average, now for the most part, most of these offenses were well into the top 50 on the scoring offenses, but Indiana was as low as 73. If you want to score points, you need to run the ball, right? And you can't be a team ranking in the hundreds and just rely on this pass-happy offense. You need to eventually convert and get those tough yards and get your offense moving at a good rate. I personally believe that reflects more on the offensive line than the running backs that they've had, albeit the running backs have not been great. I don't believe LSU's had a stud running back in the last 3 seasons. I think they've had serviceable, good players back there, but no one who's really, great per se. I think Caden Durham has a good chance to be great this year, and maybe Trey Holly in the mix, who knows, has a chance to do his thing. And then I really like Harlem Berry as a true freshman. So I think this is a good running back room in terms of talent. Maybe not as much depth as they've had the last few years, but I think it's probably the most talented running back room that they've had. And look, nothing in spring suggested that the offensive line will be improved. However, I will suggest that most of the starting offensive line was just the returning guys, and they're clearly waiting to work in all these portal and newcomers that are coming. And I think the newcomers are the ones with the most talent. If anything else, if you just want hope that they will improve in run blocking, just noting that it is 4 different guys than the guys who struggled to block for running backs for the last 3 years. Hopefully that at least makes you feel good. Now, that says nothing about their pass blocking because that unit was elite at pass blocking, but there's your hope if you're looking for some.
With the offensive line, maybe putting them in a different scheme, mixing some different things in, finding what they're comfortable with. I mean, where is LSU really kind of there? Because I don't disagree with you. Like, LSU's had talented enough running backs to put forth maybe you don't have that guy the last 3 years that's going to go for, 1,400 yards or whatnot, but you have guys that you could get to that number with. And the offensive line run blocking last year, it was a disappointment, especially all the talk that we heard about it going into the season. So, I mean, is it more figuring out what they're comfortable with or training them up better?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, you got to have more diverse coaching with these guys. I mean, run blocking and pass blocking are just such opposite moves. A lot of people think that just a block is a block, and it's literally a pass block. You're going backwards, and a run block, you're stepping forward, And I would like to see more physical run game elements added, not as like part of your bread and butter offense. I don't want you lining up on 1st and 10 after the kickoff and running a toss dive every time. However, situationally, I would love to see some counter tray where you got, guards pulling. I'd love to see some situation. And granted, look, pulling last year was not a strength of the offensive line. When they did it, they were pretty bad at it. But I would like to see some under center, maybe a little bit of fullback help for them back there. Just implement a few packages of more power running offense, just situationally, to help you out. One of the things that was frustrating last year was how many RPOs you saw in the red zone, knowing that run option is basically non-existent when it's being called to Nussmeier as the run option, right?
Yeah.
So, I just think that for these short yardage situations, I would like to see that a little more often, you know what I mean, where you're not just reliant on out of shotgun, inside zone kind of stuff.
How much can Juwan Johnson maybe help with that in his package?
I think goal line, that'd be really nice, actually. I really like what I saw out of him in spring. Now, I don't think he's a guy who's going to be out there, reading defenses, like we were talking about right after the kickoff at the 25-yard line. But like Brian Kelly said, he can read a cover zero and he can pass the ball well enough against man coverage in short yardage situations. Don't expect him to throw some touch on it and get it underneath and throw a dime in the corner of the end zone there. But, in terms of getting him rolling out, he's physical, by the way, too. He's not a thin kid whatsoever. He will lower his shoulder and get it in there. I would love to see you spice up your particularly your goal line stuff, right, with some Juwan Johnson packages. I think that would help out a lot.
Talking with Preston Guy, of course, staff writer, covers LSU football and recruiting over at TigerBait.com. You can get him on Twitter at PGuy77. Realistic expectation for Caden Durham in year 2?
Yeah, I don't want to put a number that's too high. I think we all would like to see him be a 1,000-yard rusher, right?
Yeah.
That being said, if he runs for 750, and then you look up and Trey Holly's running for 650, and then Harlem Berry's running for 550, it's like, okay, well, it's not that Caden Durham was bad this year. It's just you had more guys to share. I would like to see your running offense run for, say, 2,500 yards this year. Okay. That would put you in the top 25 or near the top 25. Last year, top 25 was 2,700 yards rushing. I would like to see about 2,500 total yards rushing. And if one guy doesn't hit that 1,000-yard mark, so be it. You know what I mean? But you need more out of your second and third guy if your first guy's not going to be a 1,000-yard rusher.
And some of the best rushing seasons LSU's had, have just been the running back by committee approach.
Mm-hmm.
You can go back through the years, especially during the Les Miles time. All right, you mentioned earlier you love Harlem Berry, and everyone seems to love Harlem Berry, not necessarily just from a running game perspective, but how much does he change LSU's offense?
Well, he's a dynamic receiver as well and really nimble with the ball in his hands. Caden Durham probably has more top-end speed, but, Harlem Berry probably is better at accelerating and getting to his top speed. He's very nimble, and understand in 7-on-7, he played wide receiver, and he played wide receiver well. So this is a guy who's going to be a dynamic threat out there. If you can get him in space and use him properly, you're going to have to be a little more creative. I don't think as a true freshman, he's going to be a guy who just takes inside zones and finds the hole, bounces off a tackle. You know what I mean? I think he's going to need some time to develop as a player before he's able to read and find the holes and read his blocks. He's going to need a little more time to develop physically before he's able to shred blocks. That being said, he can move and he can catch. You're going to have to design some ways to get him in space. I think Harlem Berry could be an X factor for this offense this coming season.
Yeah, I know. I think that's a great term, X factor, because he seems like that guy that while everything you said is like, yep, he needs to bulk up a little bit, develop, shed tackles, mature in that part of his game. But you also just look at him and you go, how are you going to keep that guy off the field? Just at certain points. Like, it feels like you're doing a disservice to yourself and your offense, which is wild because of all the talent and speed and agility and everything they have on that side, to not have Harlem Berry out there in some capacity during certain situations. So, I think that's one of the more fascinating things to keep an eye on throughout the summer and obviously the fall and heading into the season is just how they end up using him. And Brian Kelly's like, he lives up to the 5-star billing. So, that's going to be interesting. Switch sides of the ball with me, Preston, if you would, for a minute, because, LSU's worst unit last year were the safeties. I think we all know that. And they've done some extensive retooling there, bringing in Halsey, bringing in Cooley, returning the guys that you did, young players. What do you think about the depth just in that room right now as they head into summer workouts?
Yeah, let me just rip off a few names, and I think it'd be somewhat agreeable that if this guy turned out to be a pretty good player this year, it wouldn't be shocking, right? Deshaun Spears.
Not at all.
Joel Rogers showed a lot of promise, right?
Yeah.
Then you're talking about Halsey and Jim Coyley. There's 4 names right there where, they ripped off and then an all-conference type season. You'd be like, okay, all right, that made sense. And then you throw in guys like Tamarcus Cooley in there. You throw in guys, Jordan Gilbert, maybe he's improved. I know he wasn't great last year, but he was your starting safety last year, and maybe some of those reps, and he's been able to improve a good bit. You just kind of get the feel for just how deep that room is just off of what I'm naming. And I'm a big fan of depth, especially for these positions like safety, DB, corner, D-line, that kind on defense in general, I guess, is where I'm really a big fan of depth. And there's a lot of it in a lot of these positions, and there's a reason why people are saying this is Brian Kelly's best roster he's had, despite having a team that had 3 first-round draft picks. We forget about it. In fact, in that 2023 offense, we also had Will Campbell, who was a top 5 pick as well. So you had 4 first-round draft picks, and people are still sitting here saying, yeah, this roster's better, though, because you're seeing how good this roster really is.
Yeah. The versatility of the safety room, I don't feel like might be being talked about enough because, I mean, you bring in a guy like Cooley, it feels like you can get a lot of them on the field at the same time, potentially. You know, Cooley can play nickel as well. They played Deshaun Spears all over the field a year ago. I mean, do you kind of feel that as well, that it's maybe we're not talking about the versatility of that room enough?
Well, and more so than your safety room being versatile, your DB room is versatile.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we're not even talking about guys like Mansour Delane, who plays corner primarily. But watch his film. That guy wraps up and tackles. If he needs to go back there and play free safety, I have a lot of confidence. Jakeem Jackson is another guy I could see being very versatile, the transfer from Florida. DJ Pickett is a guy who they're working at corner, but he's got the body. He can play safety. So, yes, there's a lot of versatility. In fact, before you added Halsey, I really thought that they were going to have to move a corner to safety to make it work. Now we'll just see. Maybe there's a little bit of shuffling on both ways, and they just work to find an identity. They certainly have enough talented bodies out there to figure something out. There's no doubt about that.
Much different conversations we're having this season heading in as opposed to 2024. And these are much more fun. I enjoy having these conversations a lot more than the ones this time last year. Preston, we always appreciate the time, man. Y'all get him on Twitter at PGuy77. Read his stuff over at tigerbait.com. I believe Hunt's back next Friday, so you'll be talking to Hunt. Yeah.
No. Well, I'll see you next week for the Musso show.
All right, Preston. We appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
All right, see you soon, Matt.
All right, that is Preston Guy. This is the Hunt Palmer Show. Musso in for Hunt here on a Friday, sending you into your Memorial Day weekend. We're going to grab a break, come back on the other side, keep the football talk going, but we'll switch to the black and gold. A veteran wide receiver updated the quarterback competition and what he's seen from a couple young guys. We'll let you hear what he said next here on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is the website. Every car that is on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Safety, probably a big deal if you're in the market for a vehicle. If you go shop at Genesis of Baton Rouge, you will know that you're getting behind the wheel of one of the safest cars on the road because every single model on the line, every single model was a IIHA top safety pick. Some of them were top safety picks plus. So from the entry level to the highest end, you're talking about a car that is among the safest on the road. It's a big, big deal. So you start there, then you go check out the style, the comfort, all those bells and whistles that come with a luxury brand of vehicle. That's all there for you at Genesis Baton Rouge. And if you make a purchase, every single purchase comes with a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Every single purchase comes with 3 years of complimentary valet maintenance. It's all there at Genesis of Baton Rouge. I invite you to go by and see them. Airline at Pico across from Women's Hospital, or start your process today online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
I don't know if you've heard, the Saints have a quarterback competition going on this offseason. You know, Derek Carr, he retired. Jake Haener got hurt, so it seems to kind of be down to 2 for right now, at least through OTAs. And that's Tyler Shuck, your second-round draft pick, and Spencer Rattler, your returning half the season starter. Obviously, I say all of that in jest. All of you have heard about that. It's been really the only storyline surrounding the Saints. Yeah, that's it. I know, Jordan, you're surprised, right?
Derek. Yeah. I've never heard of that guy.
Yeah.
Derek Carr. Who was that?
Well, he played quarterback for the Saints for technically 2 seasons, but really, if you add it all up, it might be like a season and a third.
If that. I mean,
he retired, and you drafted a quarterback. You have a few returning, and they're competing to kind of, take that position. And with OTAs underway, you're finally really getting to see your first opportunity at all of them in that. And yes, the injury to Jake Haener is a bit of a setback for him, obviously, because he'll miss the rest of OTAs, but he'll be back for training camp. And could he re-enter the competition at that point? Maybe. But if we're being honest, this really kind of always felt like it was Rattler Shuck to begin with. Not to slight Jake Haener. It just that's the feel that it always had. Interestingly enough, though, we can listen to what Kellen Moore says about it, and he's obviously going to say all the right things because he's the head coach, and he's not going to want to give too much, and even teammates aren't going to want to do that either. But anytime a veteran player talks about two young guys, and I mean, look, Shuck's going to be a rookie, Rattler's going into year 2. They fully meet that definition of young guy, right? Brandon Cooks, who obviously has experience in New Orleans, and for the sake of this conversation, we'll just forget how that experience in New Orleans ended. But he's a veteran who's seen a lot of football, who's played a lot of football, has played with a lot of different quarterbacks in his time, and he met with reporters after the third day of OTAs on Thursday and talked a little bit about the quarterback battle. What I actually found pretty interesting, just kind of first, was he was asked if wide receivers like a quarterback competition in the offseason and in camp.
Absolutely, because I think it should bring the best out of you, and so it's fun seeing those guys compete. They're all three of them are having a great spring, and so it's going to be fun to watch that competition.
I just found that interesting because it's something that we never really consider, in all honesty, at least not as much as we probably should, how the quarterback competition impacts the performance of other guys on the team. And look, I mean, there's certain guys that doesn't like. Chris Olave is going to make the team, right? But for him to say, absolutely, because it should bring out the best in you, that's intriguing because, you're obviously going to have a better rapport with one guy than the other. And with them rotating reps and things, maybe you're not playing with the guy that, you always want there. But Cooks would go on and mention any advice that he would give the young players, in this particular case, quarterback.
I mean, be you. Don't try to do anything outside the box. Be coachable. Do what Kellen's trying to get you to do and lock in and let everything else take care of itself.
One more piece of sound from Cooks, then I'll get more into the thoughts and the meat and potatoes of the segment. He was asked, just his first impression through 3 OTA practices of Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck.
I mean, they letting it go. They playing with a lot of confidence, both of those guys, and you can see the competition going on. They can definitely sling it. So, I look forward to continue to see that grow.
It's important to preface this entire conversation with it is early. Like, it is early in this competition. They've had rookie minicamp, which was just Tyler Shuck, and now 3 practices during OTAs, and all they've really been doing is 7-on-7. You haven't even put the pads on. You probably won't even do that really until training camp. So it's early. But every single one of us, all you listening, me sitting here talking, all of us have our own vision and opinion of how this is going to play out. And look, Kellen Moore noted they've rotated, and they're going to continue to rotate guys with the ones. On Thursday, it was Spencer Rattler who took reps with the ones, and Shuck ran with the 2s. Jake Haener got some reps with the 1 earlier in the week. Obviously, Tyler Shuck did as well. They're going to continue to move that through, and they should, because it's May. But it's hard for me to sit here and look at this and say, Rattler started 6 games for you a year ago, played in 7. You didn't have a win there. That's not necessarily totally his fault. Your team wasn't very good, and even the players on your team that are good were hurt. And he played behind a makeshift offensive line every week. I don't think in Rattler's time as a starter, he played behind the same offensive line because you just kept having injuries and injuries and injuries. And if he did, it was only a game or 2 that he did because you also had guys come back from injury and then go back out. That matters. You had no Chris Olave. You had no Rashid Shaheed. All of those things, that matters. And that's one of the interesting things about this is whichever guy gets that game 1 start, provided everything goes the way you want it to in camp and everybody stays healthy, you're going to get a good look at that person really for the first time. whether it's Rattler, whether it's Shuck, because you should have your full complement going in. Like, you think I need to see Chris Olave do anything in preseason games? No. Wrap him in bubble wrap, just stick him on the sideline and have him ready to go week 1 when you play the Cardinals. So you can ensure that whichever guy gets the first crack at this starting job has the full complement of weapons. Now, that's kind of a different conversation in and of itself as well, because in a new system, you do need to see that, guys can operate in a game like, atmosphere with it, but you can simulate enough of that in joint practices and things of that nature. So that's really the interesting part. And that takes care of the whole, okay, you never really got a full look at Spencer Rattler. Do you really know what you have there? And I think if you're looking at it objectively, the answer is no. Because he did do some good things, even with the makeshift team around him. But again, it's hard for me to look at this and not just go, yes, Rattler's got the experience. And there's no substitute for that. What do you always hear? The best coach a player can have is playing time. It's one of the great cliches in sports, but the reason it's one of the great ones is because it's true. And he's got that at the NFL level. But the thing that I just can't get away from with this, and this would have applied to Jake Haener as well, is they were both drafted by the previous coach. Tyler Shuck is Kellen Moore's guy. That's the guy he liked. Thought enough of him that the Saints spent a second-round pick on him. The first time in their history they've drafted a quarterback in the second round, and only the second time they've drafted one in the first 2 rounds. You've heard that ad nauseum now, but it's worth reiterating for this conversation. You have a guy coming in Kellen Moore who is trying to establish his football team. And for me, even sitting here on May the 23rd, it's just hard for me to get around that idea that it won't be Tyler Shuck getting that first crack because it's the head coach's guy. That's the one he drafted. He likes how he fits into his system. He's going to want to try to go win with his guy. Not to say they're not going to actually, play this out and make it a fair competition or anything like that. I'm sure they will. But again, it's his guy. You see that all the time. Look at Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen, they could have retained Jameis Winston. That was Sean's guy. When he was finally able to go get his guy, Derek Carr, didn't that work out great? He went and got him. A guy he drafted back in Oakland and all of those things. Like, that's who Tyler Shuck is to Kellen Moore. So, look, I love hearing Brandon Cooks, a veteran wide receiver, going, man, they're playing with confidence. Like, he would know. He knows what a confident quarterback looks like. They can really sling it. That's great. But the big question is, one of them's actually got NFL experience, but the other one's the head coach's guy. I think track record for head coaches speaks plenty that they go with their guy at least to start, and if it doesn't work out, then you could see somebody else. But one thing's for sure, whoever gets that first snap, you're going to get a good look at them because they should have a full complement of weapons this go-round in a brand-new offense. And you should be able to know pretty early how it's going to go. We'll see. Saints will open the season against the Cardinals in the Dome come September. All right, we'll grab a break, come back on the other side, close out hour number 1 of the Hunt Palmer Show. Matt McMahon and the Tigers. Always be recruiting. We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Closing out hour number 1 of the Hunt Palmer Show. Musso in for Hunt. Talk some Texas A&M. The next segment, start hour 2 with Ryan Brawninger from Tex Ags. LSU basketball landed another commitment. This one for the class of 2026. So the current recruiting cycle that the basketball Tigers are in fact, it's the first commitment for the class of 2026, and it's another international player, Australian forward Marcus Vaughn, 6'8", small forward position, commits to the Tigers on Thursday. The last 3 commitments for LSU have been international players. You look at Pablo Tamba in the transfer portal, technically the transfer portal, right? Spain, obviously, Ron Zipper from Israel as well in the class of 2025. And now Marcus Vaughn's out of Australia. He chose LSU as opposed to the NBL over there in Australia, which just helps develop, elite NBA talent is how they describe it. So, I mean, that's, kind of what you're getting. A guy who has a pretty unique skill set that you would look for in a forward, can rebound, can knock down the three, again, 6'8". But I think it just speaks to the bigger, maybe, kind of trend you're seeing here. I mean, Australia, obviously not a stranger to LSU. I mean, Ben Simmons and obviously assistant coach David Patrick, that relationship, for what it's worth. I mean, Vaughn's told Matthew Bruni of On3, he's known David Patrick since he was 5 years old. So he played a very heavy part in this one as well. But you kind of knew when you brought Ronald Dupree on that the international scouting was going to take off. And your last 3 coming, from outside of the United States, I think speaks volumes to that. I mean, man, Dupree was the director of international scouting for the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, he's got deep ties. And, look, obviously you're going to want to see the returns on how this looks and how it works before you really judge it. But, I mean, man, early on, I like this approach an awful lot for LSU basketball, because you look at some of the best players in the game and they come from the international ranks. Just think back, to the Olympics and how competitive the basketball was in the Summer Olympics in 2024. There's so much talent, and it's just untapped in the college game that I love that LSU's kind of taking it on full head of steam. Look, we'll see. Obviously, they'll build plenty more around Vaughn's in this 2026 class. Again, he's the first commitment for what it's worth. On3 has him as a 3-star currently. But, I mean, that's a guy who had opportunities to play professional already in his homeland of Australia and get developed from there and go to the NBA, which they obviously have a track record of doing, and just said no. He's also participated in the NBA's Global Academy already to this point in his career. So you're certainly bringing in a really talented player. You'll wait a little bit. Obviously, he won't be on the floor free this year, class of 26. But it just speaks to the current direction it feels like that LSU recruiting is headed in basketball, and that's international. And, man, I like it an awful lot. We'll see. They'll continue to build that class. All right, that's just about going to do it here for hour number 1 of the Hunt Palmer Show. Hour 2 is next. Ryan Brawninger from Tex Ags joins the show. We'll get a preview of the A&M Aggies.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. Property and casualty or group employee benefits. Your one-stop shop for all things insurance is, of course, the Highland Insurance Group. If you're a business owner and you don't have a great relationship with your insurance broker, they're just the guy who came with the lowest premium number, that's one way to handle it, but it might not be the best way, especially when something happens. Whether it's a hurricane or a car accident or a cyber breach or a lawsuit or an injury. When that happens, you're going to need your insurance to respond. And if you only have the insurance in place because it was the cheapest one, it may not. Jonathan Carver and his team can be a trusted advisor and a part of your team as a business to make sure that your business continues to run even if the event happens. Give them a call or check them out online, HighlandIG.com. They're right here in Baton Rouge, but they can help you out statewide. It's Jonathan Carver and his team at the Highland Insurance Group. They're online at HighlandIG.com.